It's Circle Day, everyone. Circle Day.
It's Circle Day. Although
I like the circles. We look good in them.
yeah, except you need to unshare right now because we're gonna get started, and it's not me up
Well,
first.
I don't have. I'm sorry, but I don't have circles for this one. These
No
were
circles for this one.
rounded
Bro,
thumb knobs. We'll go back to circles
we
later.
are far too square, Michael. Far too square.
Dude, be there or be square.
Yeah, they
Guess I
all. By the
wasn't there.
way, all the folks here at DjangoCon are saying hello to Michael. So
Oh, really? Okay. Well,
yeah,
I totally missed them. I was out of town. Just got back last night, so I wasn't able to go to the conference. I was out of town for a reason that was not the conference.
all right. Well, let's kick it off. You ready to go? All right. Hello and welcome to Python Bytes, where we deliver Python news and headlines directly to your earbuds. This is episode 493, recorded on Tuesday, August 25th, 2026. I'm Calvin Hendricks Parker.
And I'm Michael Kennedy.
Hey, Michael, glad for you to be here. So we are sponsored this episode by Logfire from Pydantic, so make sure you check them out. There are links in the show notes. If you want to connect with Michael and I on the socials and the show itself, you can catch us on Mastodon, Blue Sky, X, and LinkedIn. And join us for the live stream. Each week we record this live. You can join in, comment, be a part of the audience at pythonbytes.fm/live. It's usually Tuesday at 7 a.m. Pacific. This week's a little different but because of DjangoCon. And finally, if you want an artisanal, handcrafted digest of every week's show notes in your email form, add your name to our Friends of the Show list, and we'll never share it to anyone else. Michael, let's dig in. I think we got a web-heavy episode except for one item in here, and you're going to kick off with one right now.
Yeah, I'm going to put it in reverse, or race mode, if you know the British radio joke. Yeah, well, first of all, hello, DjangoCon. Thank you for the greetings. And Calvin, you're reporting live from DjangoCon, yes?
I am live from Django. I am in the hotel of DjangoCon here in downtown Chicago. We are in the Loop, so those of you who know Chicago area, right on the river. It has been a great conference. This is day 2. We've had some excellent keynotes. Don Wages and Sarah from the Django community gave some excellent keynotes each day. And there's been some lightning talks are also one of my favorite things. So a couple rounds of lightning talks have already happened, one of which you're going to cover as part of one of your news items. So there's a lot of Django news actually in this episode included. So it's very timely that DjangoCon is happening right now and lots is happening in the community.
Yeah, we've got a couple of Django topics, actually. You did say it's a web-heavy episode, right?
It is. Except for my one outlier. We'll get to that.
We'll get to that one. All right. Well, let's talk about the first one. So this is, I ran across this for something called Traffic. Are you familiar with Traffic?
I am familiar with Traffic.
Yeah. So Traffic it's a reverse proxy like Nginx or Caddy, but it's a little more focused on microservices and like I've got a Kubernetes cluster and stuff is coming and going and maybe it's recycled and now it's in a different location in terms of a internal URL. And so it's going to like find those pieces and put it together. So I ran across this thing called Traffic Manager. Are you familiar with Traffic Manager?
I'm not familiar with Traffic Manager.
So I don't know about you.
Yeah, anyone who's ever used Kubernetes is using some kind of reverse proxy.
Yeah, and this would be, yeah, exactly. I think Traffic might be the most popular for that. It's not the one we're using for Python Bytes. I'll say a bit more about that in a second. But yeah, so this Traffic Manager is like a visualization dashboard for your traffic server. And if traffic is your front end server, your reverse proxy, whatever you call it, it is the one choke point that all traffic is going through. So it's a really good place to report on how things are going. Of course, besides CDNs, which are, their own deal. But this is a really nice looking UI that it gives you all sorts of information. How many requests? How many routes do you got? How many services is it serving? What's the traffic? What media are you hosting? What else we got? Route map, logs, CrowdSec for security, I presume, TLS options, certificates.
Nice. Yeah.
All of that. You could just see this live as a web dashboard over top of your infrastructure.
That's really slick.
I think that's pretty slick, right? What do you think?
Well, I think having that available just at your fingertips to be able to diagnose, triage, understand patterns, especially when something goes wrong, having more bandwidth of data coming in as the human making some decisions is better. this looks wonderful for that kind of
Yeah, I
work.
think it looks great. And it shows you how to run it just as an installer, but also on Docker, on Podman, and like on bare metal Linux and so on. Yeah, you can even edit like static files and a few other things. So I think this is pretty cool. So I saw that and I thought, oh, let me cover this. I'm like, well, then I looked into traffic a little bit, and traffic is great for I think a certain class of problems, the ones I described at the opening, but it's not a true just front end thing. Like for example, it doesn't serve static files at all, right?
Yeah.
Or certain things. So it's like a little bit. A lot of people could use it, but not everybody. Well, what are the other options? Well, the other options are Nginx, right? Which is what we use for Python Bytes. I have an insane amount of Nginx config files. There are 2,200 lines of Nginx config powering 33 containers on my server.
Oh my goodness.
So I'm a little committed to Nginx at this point. And unlike many other things, you can't run another server like Traffic or Caddy, which I'm going to talk about, next to it because they all need port 80. Like you can't even set up TLS until you can get to, you know what I mean? Like it's, so it's a really hard cutover basically is what I'm saying. So right now I'm sticking with Nginx, and I'm like, well, is there something like this for Nginx? Because that is a full on front end story, right? So I will introduce you to Nginx UI, I guess is how you would pronounce it. Yet another Nginx web UI. I don't
Apparently
know the
there's
other
others.
ones.
It's
But
not the only one.
Yes, it's not the only one. No, but you can go to the demo, which is very confusing because it just takes you here and says you got to log in. I'm like, huh? What do you think that's about? Go back to the page that took you to the demo. Where's the username and password? Nah, but I'm a hacker. I don't know if I told you in my spare time.
Admin.
You may be a hacker too, because let's see if that gets us in.
Oh, sure enough.
Sure enough, login successful. There we go. So this is actually even better than the traffic one, I think. So it shows you stuff about your server. This is your Linux machine running, or Docker machine, running Nginx. The CPU stats, network stats, disk I/O, all that kind of, which is really cool, right? Then you get over to Nginx, and it shows you the max number of requests per second that you can handle, the max concurrent connections, the request per connection, which is like, these are just like kind of stats. And it shows you where the process is working. Is it cache processes, worker process, etc., live connections, all this stuff. That's really cool. It lets you manage your sites. Now, at least the Nginx one, I think actually the traffic one as well, but the Nginx one lets you edit your config. You can go over your manage sites here, and you can say, I could even add a site, but I could go over here and edit the prime sponsor, whatever that is. But you can go and put in, it's just start typing away in your Nginx config here, set your upstream, set your server. You can view the logs, which is pretty sweet, and all kinds of stuff. Look at the certificates, configs, upstreams. This one makes me nervous. Well, terminal just goes to your server. I'm not a fan of that. Like that one should be turned off. That just there's no need for that.
A little bit of security risk there.
You know what? I'm sure it's fine. Everyone was just looking. Yeah, it would be mean to mess with this.
I mean, it kind of reminds me of the old days of Webmin,
Yes.
which was riddled with security problems.
Like a C panel or something.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah. So anyway, what's cool though is I believe this as well. Certainly the prior one, you can run it in Docker just as a sidecar Docker container. So it's just in your Docker cluster set up there, which I think is pretty cool. So this is one that looks pretty interesting. And finally, I'm a fan of Caddy. If I didn't have 2,000 lines of config, I'd have to migrate. I'm starting over. I'm pretty sure I would do Caddy. Caddy looks great.
I've
Have you seen
never used Caddy. No, I've never used. I mean, I've heard of it. I've never used it. I've been more on. We've been using Traffic quite a bit, and we've historically used a lot of Nginx.
Yeah. Yeah, same. I mean, Nginx, and then like know about Traffic. But so this is really cool because its config file is supposed to be like just what you need. It's got kind of a Python vibe. Like, yeah, you don't need a namespace, a static class, and a static main void. Like, could we just put the thing that does the thing in there, which is really cool. And it also does automatically let's encrypt certificates. Like, in order to get SSL, all you got to do is turn it on and have the IP address pointing there, and you make a request to it, and it just does that, manages it like that. So certainly a very neat set up,
Yeah.
and I feel like this is a pretty modern server. Okay, so with that said, there's also Kata UI, which is
Of
another
course.
one of these. Of course there is, right? Because why wouldn't there be? It lets you look at like a dashboard and then logs and like metrics for your server and so on. It's like so dark mode that even the text on a black background is mostly dark. So if you
Yeah.
like
I
dark
wonder
mode,
if there's not a limited audience for these UIs though, because if you're at a certain level, you're going to have Prometheus, Grafana, and all these kinds of metrics streaming into a centralized observability platform where
yeah,
you can now
I,
correlate and trace the requests through, because you're still only getting the view from the web server. I didn't know.
yes,
Did you see if they include any kind of web request tracing in there? It could only go so far, I assume.
I didn't. No, I didn't see any.
Yeah.
No, I didn't see any. I think that this is targeted at the Home Assistant crew, the
Mm,
one website, small project crew. Although the traffic one talks about a lot of auto discovery of services and on that kind of stuff, which
that would be really
speaks
interesting.
not to it. Yeah, so the traffic one seems maybe to be the most pro of them all.
Very cool. Well,
Anyway, there you go.
that,
If
that's
you want a
awesome.
UI for your front end web server, why not check
You
it
can
out?
get it.
You can
All
get
right.
it.
Well, let's head back into Django world. And in the Django world, there's a brand new release that released. I think it's like literally here. I'll dive in. We're at Wagtail land now. Wagtail did an 8.0 release today. So this is very, very hot news. If we go into the Wagtail repository and take a look at the releases, you'll see here 6 hours ago, 8.0 release for Wagtail. So the Wagtail team has been very busy. They have not even completed the release blog for this yet, which will come out tomorrow, depending on when this comes out. You should see that news tomorrow. But if you're a Wagtail user, you can rejoice that there is the 8.0 version out right now. Some new stuff that is inside of Wagtail. We've got custom base page models are now supported, so projects aren't locked into subclassing Wagtail's page as shipped. So you get a little more flexibility to having your own custom base page models. I think that's going to be a big win for folks who want to do more customized things and not feel so constrained. The V3 REST API handles both read and write operations for the CMS. So that gives a lot more flexibility to the API and being able to have a fully headless Wagtail if you wanted. There's a global registry for permission policies plus full customizability for the remaining page views via the page view set. Another big one to watch out for if you're migrating from prior to 8, so in the 7 or the 6 range, AVIF and WebP images are no longer going to be auto-converted to PNG by default. So that's something to watch out for on upgrade if you're depending on that specific behavior. They're going to be treated more natively by the platform, but you may have some special behaviors baked in because you were depending on the auto-conversion. But
I don't know
more,
how to feel about WebP images.
I like to be on the cutting edge of these things, but I just feel like that I don't know. I feel like they're everywhere though. I more and more see them on all the major sites.
Yeah,
They're more efficient.
almost all the ones on Python Bytes.fm are WebP.
Yeah.
I went through the Google page optimization stuff, and like Lighthouse. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
All those things, right?
I think
Page
everyone
speed.
has. Yeah.
Yeah, all those things is like, you need to upgrade to WebP. You need to upgrade. I'm like, fine, I will upgrade to WebP. And I went through it, and yeah, I do think it's actually a little bit better. Like, is it as big of a deal as they make? Probably not, but sometimes it's really nice and so on. And it does seem to work pretty seamlessly, except for if I go to YouTube, like for example, if I want to change the thumbnail for this live version of our recording
Yeah.
on a Google property, it will not allow me to upload a WebP file because it says it's not an image. I'm like,
I'm not surprised. It's Google.
so there's places like that, like, or if you try to set it
Yeah.
as the poster for your podcast, like a lot of the podcast apps can't display WebP, even though the platform can. Like, there's just like a little hang up. I imagine though, it's like there are people like, I want WebP, stop turning it back into something else. I put it there on purpose because Google
Right.
told me to.
Because this is optimized. It's funny because a lot of platforms are just a little behind the times on what image, because obviously they're trying to protect their platforms and not allow random images or random not images to be uploaded as images. So I think a little peer pressure.
Thumbnail.exe, for example.
Right. It's a little peer pressure to get folks to do the right thing would probably go a long way. So Google, if you're listening, go update your application to support WebP
Exactly.
for that.
Exactly. YouTube team. Just
Yeah,
add a
do it. Let's do it.
star.webp in there. Come on,
Let's do
please.
it. So, and more importantly in this release, there are some 5 major security fixes: the page admin API restrictions, the document identification by a SHA-1 hash, the descendant collections in documents and images API, and the snippet copy permissions, and the page translation endpoint have all had fixes. I highlighted them here on the screen, but you can go see those in the release notes. They're called out with the big security fix prefix there. Also of note is formalized. They now have formalized Django 6.1 support, and the CI now runs with UV and a lock file. So the UV takeover it's been successful in the Wagtail community.
Very cool. Yeah, Wagtail's neat. I'm glad it's getting the love, and 8.0, that's a big release.
Yeah, and I think this will tie in with your later segment, but the intentionality and the sophistication by which they tie themselves to specific releases, so that you know you are well supported by the community, by the bug fixes, by the maintainers. All that lines up really, really well in the Wagtail community, and we'll talk about that a little more when you get into the Django stuff as well.
Absolutely. Well, before we get to that, though, maybe a quick thanks to our sponsor.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, so thank you, Pydantic, and thank you, Logfire, their observability platform from Pydantic. So here's the situation. Your AI agent failed at 2 a.m. Was it the model, a tool call, the database? Most observability tools can't tell you because they only see part of the stack. Pydantic Logfire sees all of it. One trace across all your agents, LLMs, APIs, and databases. Down to the infrastructure, services, Kubernetes, as well as hosts. It's built on open telemetry with SDKs for Python, TypeScript, and Rust, and it works with any OTel compatible language. Every prompt, token count, cost right in your vector searches and API calls. You query everything with a Postgres compatible SQL language, so super easy to do, to get reports and slice and dice them. And your coding agent can get there through the Logfire MCP server. So stop guessing, read the trace. Once you have it installed, you'll have the trace, right? Logfire AI. AI, it's still just engineering. I'm actually going to close out the show with a little sidebar on that. But visit pythonbytes.fm/logfire today and sign up. You'll get 10 million records for free every month. No credit card required. And we talked about last time, you can even click the onboard your project with your coding agent, which instantly copies a markdown block you just paste into Claude or Codex, and it will go on it. I'm on it. You're going to have Logfire in your app, so give me 10 minutes. So thank you to Pydantic for supporting the show.
That the token count feature, I think they're downplaying that. They need to put that front and center. That's going to be a big deal.
Yeah, that's the one that you all are chasing, right?
Yeah, totally right now. So I don't want to turn this into a full segment, but I think that there's a lot to be said for having that just right out of the box with their tools. So
yeah,
very cool.
Awesome.
Well, thanks Pydantic Logfire for being the sponsor. This is the one non-webby thing on here, but could have a web implication. So the Python Software Foundation has announced RISC-V support is now officially supported by CPython. Why would anyone care? So I'll get into that. So RISC-V is a CPU architecture, and it's technically, so the important bits here, it's now a tier 3 platform under PEP 11. So the rules for when they build, what they build, how they support, how fast something gets prioritized for fixes, all comes into play when saying it's a tier 3 platform. But it does mean someone's watching and someone does care. So this is specifically for 64-bit Linux targets. So that means that if you've got single board computers, kind of like Raspberry Pis, but they're running alternate architectures like RISC-V, which there's quite a few of those out there on the market right now, you can now depend on there being a Python build that will run on your architecture and not having it be kind of a maybe it'll work. So this opens up a lot of things in like maybe the IoT space, the home automation space. There's a lot of at-edge computing applications here where now Python can be a number one potentially choice for the coding, application building, deploying at edge, and you're not relying on just maybe lower level languages. So hopefully this opens up some of that IoT space to other folks. So yeah, like the RISC-V is it's an open architecture that anyone can implement, unlike the x86 and ARM, which are like more closed. But its market is projected to quadruple by 2032. So we expect to see more news about RISC-V architectures and processors, especially given all the hype around GPUs and things like that right now. So what changes? The port's now maintained with a compatibility target. CPython changes are going to be less likely to quietly break it. That means that they got to take care of it. Someone's basically watching. What you don't get, there are no python.org installers yet and no binary wheel parity for native extensions. So if you've got an extension that depends on a C compiled or a Rust compiled binary piece, that's still on you to compile and roll your own. But at least this is a step in the right direction. And if their market share is going to quadruple, it's nice to see Python taking proactive measures to ensure we have compatibility there. Let's see what else we got in here. Yeah, so one thing that folks may also think would be happening is, for example, you're familiar with SP32 boards. If you do any kind of home automation or any kind of like hacking on hardware or IoT, you've probably heard of the SP32 platform or the Raspberry Pi Pico 2 platform. Those are RISC-V processors, but they are not 64-bit Linux RISC processors. So there's not necessarily support yet for those embedded processors. You're still going to want to use MicroPython or CircuitPython for those kinds of applications. But if you're using something like the Vision 5 board, there's a couple other boards out there on the market that are more like Raspberry Pis. You'll now have support. You can embed those, put them at the edge. There's reasons why you may do that. For example, costs, supply, demand, power, efficiency, energy usage, a lot of special cases here. But again, I think it's kind of exciting news. I'm a nerd when it comes to like hardware and architectures, and I know not everyone cares, but it does mean you could run Django on a RISC-V processor now reliably and have releases out there that will guarantee to work. So that's what the news is with RISC-V.
I love it. Yeah, that's really cool. It's easy to think, okay, Mac, Linux, Windows, ARM, x86. Well, that's what we got to support, right? But there's a bunch of little tiny devices, right, that we all run on. Like, here's my $25 ESP32. If it were 64, then I'd be even more excited. I run CircuitPython on it. But yeah, just the ability to reach all these so many little niche things.
Well, and recently there's been shortages of Raspberry Pi 5s, for example. So I think that helps with the supply chain issues potentially. And again, from power and efficiency, we see this thing quadrupling. We better make sure Python's there. So yeah. I'm excited to see the Python community making that happen.
As well. I'm as well. My experience working with effectively MicroPython, it's super cool, and the language is Python, but there's a lot of stuff like, you want this library? No. You don't get that library. You get something that looks a little bit like it, and it sort of works like it, but it's it's really tricky. So the more it can just be the same, the better.
Yeah. So eventually, I assume this will eventually trickle down into, who knows, maybe MicroPython will kind of just disintegrate or fade into the background of just genuine Python support for the architecture now that this is here.
Maybe it becomes a little bit like an Anaconda. Like it is the same Python, but it's more ready for you to actually do stuff with. Who knows? Yeah.
Well, speaking of supporting languages, I think you've got next up here.
Let's talk about Django. I mean, how did I get this? I'm not even at the conference.
I know. Well, I saw it on there. Like, I'm glad you're covering this because it's. I think it's really, again, important news. It speaks to the volumes of how the communities are supporting the software that we're putting out and the vibrancy and viability of open source.
Yeah. I always feel like with web frameworks, I'm just taking a flyer. I'm like, well, let's try this. Maybe it'll go unsupported in 6 months, or maybe it'll be still going strong. I don't know. But
not with Django.
But exactly, not with Django. And that has been true for a while. However, Django's had this sort of multi-stage release where it's like, well, some of the things are just feature releases and they won't last that long. And others, these are the LTS or long-term support versions. And those, if you install and run on those, then you're going to get guaranteed support for a couple of years at least, right? Well, the news is, folks, Django is moving to an annual release cycle, part 1, by our friend of the show, Carlton Gibson. And every release is going to be an LTS, 3 years of supported version. Super cool, right? So I think that's really good. So let me give you all the details. In 2028, January 2028, it sounds so far away, but probably it'll be here just like, oh, is it 2028? I guess, here we go. Well, I'm sure we'll cover it then. But in 2028 in January, there will be a new version of Django, and it won't be called 6.1, 7.0, or whatever the heck it would have otherwise been called. It's going to be called Django 2028. So they're moving to calendar versioning instead of semantic versioning.
Big fan of calendar versioning.
Yeah, I am too. I'm generally a fan of calendar versioning as well. So we're going to have Django 2028, Django 2029, and you won't be able to play the game like, hey, what year was Django 3 released?
Right.
Are you really a Django fan? Like, yeah. What year was Django 2028 released? Like, I'll tell you what. I bet it was 2028. Pretty amazing. So that's also helpful to kind of give you a sense of like, oh, we're running on 2026 and it's 2031. This is probably not good, folks. It's probably not good. So it can also kind of be a little bit of a marker. All right. So every release gets 1 year mainstream bug fixes, followed by 2 years of security and data loss fixes. The new release to support the last 3 years of Python versions. So there's this interchange of support guarantees with Python and the next Python release during its first year. Calendar version begins in 2028, and then we'll continue from there. 3 Django versions will be supported anytime because years are a year long, and it's 3 years of support. So there we go. And most importantly, maybe is nothing changes for a year and a half. Right. So existing commitments like 6.2 LTS are still there as they were before. Anything else you want to add to that? I mean, you were at the conference.
I think these are the kind of promises that the community needs to make so that business understands that this community is serious. If you've got software projects where you are just wishy-washy around what versions you're going to support, what versions it runs on, you see this a little bit in the WordPress community, a lot of it in the WordPress community. There's not hard and fast, like this should run on this version. There's a long-term support that's going to give you bug fixes till this version. It's a little more Wild West, I feel like, over there compared to the Django community. I think I can make that as a fair statement. The Django community is already committed to 2 long-term supports at any point in time. So like right now we've got 5.2 and 6.2 will be coming up. Now we're saying there's basically going to be 3 versions that will be stable, supported, updated, and you have now time in your enterprise planning to make sure you get your software updated to follow the schedule on your schedule and not the emergency schedule because stuff happened and now you got to deal with it. So I feel like that gives a big boost again to the peace of mind of running Django, running Python, and doing this all in production and knowing when things are going to happen. So I'm a huge fan. And the calendar versioning to boot. I again love that because you know immediately at a glance if you are 3 years out of date and just about ready to run out of end of life on LTS. It's right in the name.
Yep, and it's right there. If I were running an organization based on Django, I would probably just be flipping to the new version pretty much mid-January or something like that. But if I was a...
most do, but I think there's a class of org that can't.
Exactly, or just won't. They just have a don't touch it principle. Is it working? Just don't touch it. It's working. I think this opens up just like every February. Just have a look. What does it cost to upgrade to the next version of Django? Do a little automation.
Yeah.
Give it a go. See how it works. And that it gives you a really solid cadence of just staying up to date. And even though there's 3 year support, I wouldn't have 3 year gaps. I would have 1 year gaps because the number of issues you might run into are, on average 1/3 as many. So it just makes that little staying on top of it easier. Because if you're 5 years out and you hear something catastrophic happens and you need to update for whatever reason, well, you're all of a sudden like juggling a really big migration project with, the house on fire. So let's get ahead of it.
At this point, you can go 3 years and reliably have your CI pipeline build, once a week with like a 7-day back off and know you're going to get the security fixes and the peace of mind of always having a patched piece of software that can be automated. Like it should be no hands-on to make this now a very secure process.
And if you're doing CI/CD, maybe throw in some knocks and just get different versions or something like that, right? Like, hey, might as well automate.
Yeah, right. Know when they're coming. Get ahead of that curve.
And be like, yeah, we've been doing unit tests and CI against the next version of Django for 2 years, or for 2 months, so probably okay.
And that, unless you're doing something really, kind of off the wall, Django releases are pretty non-events these days in general.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
Indeed. Well, do you have any extra events?
I do have some extra events in here,
right.
Michael. So a couple,
over to you.
Like just a quick item here. This one was interesting because the Python docs now document the time complexity of built-in types. This is not new per se because it's been buried in a wiki that's been aging for years and years and years, but it was never front and center, and so people had to go look it up. It was never like associated right with the documentation directly. So this is just a migration from wiki to official docs. And so you can see over here on the list operation, a list copy has an O to the n complexity. And so if you are evaluating how you might implement specific algorithms, this may matter if you're in a very performance based environment, or you're just trying to be more efficient about your coding. These will give you all the hints around complexity, and it gives it for all the various default types. So if you want to know the complexity of a set compared to a dictionary, you can see those things in here. The strings and byte arrays and memory. So all those are basically baked in. You can see the complexity in the big O notation if you're into that kind of thing. I was never a computer science major in college, so I never learned about this until later in life. But that's very helpful because I get kind of next level thinking on that.
Let me add one thing really quick. I saw this as well, and this is interesting. I wish the list would have like find item as well. I don't think it does though, because then you could have put that against. Who does it? Because then you could put it against like dictionary or set, and you're like, oh, it's 1,000,000 times faster in set. That's weird. Maybe we should use that.
Right.
So these are like
especially for performance optimization.
Yeah. So it could give people a little bit of an idea, but also I think having this listed here might encourage some new contributions to CPython. Like for example, find range on there if you can.
There it is.
So what's the length or the min or the max? All right, like len or min and max, all those is O of n.
Yep.
Get len is 1. Okay, that's pretty good. So it does know. I guess that's not the.
It's been around a while.
No, but I still think min and max. Like, so for example, when you create a range, you say what is the starting value, what is the ending value, and what is the step, right?
Yeah.
It should be able to answer O of 1 what the min and max are, right? Because it knows where it starts. It knows whether it's positive or negative increment.
Yeah,
it was in the args. It's like a field of the object. So, for example, somebody might go, well, why the heck is that determined by like if I have 1,000,000 items in my range, why is it 1,000,000 computations when it could just be just like len looks up the length?
Well, 1.
Yeah, it should be O1, right? And so I think there might be some interesting interplay of performance in the next version of Python for these kinds of things.
Yep, definitely. That makes sense. Very cool. The other thing I wanted to let everyone know about, friend of Python and the language, Bruce Eckel, has released his Thinking in Python book open source. So you can go to, I believe the address is thinkinginpython.com, and the whole book's here. And he's a great author. I mean, he's been famous for doing this kind of work for decades now in multiple communities. And it's Creative Commons, freely readable online. And there's a GitHub with all the examples and solutions in it. But if you're learning Python and you want to know about the insights, idioms, and patterns, I haven't read the book yet because it just released. But I gotta imagine, knowing the author and everything that's going into this must be a great place to start.
Yeah, Bruce does excellent work. I've read some of his books, and he's been on Talk Python before as well as some author panels. So yeah, very cool. Good job,
Been
Bruce.
around the community a long time. Michael, you got any extras?
I'm feeling a little extra. So
are you feeling a little extra?
Remember last time we talked about UV, and it was those older security builds that were source only, but then I'm like, hey, UV is building them. That's kind of cool. So you want to upgrade them, but then I did a listing of all of the stuff I had. I'm like, oh, I've got a 3.9.3, a 3.9.4, 3.9.5. Like,
I'm kind of
no,
scared. I'm kind of scared to see how many I have now.
yes, exactly. There's no scenario where I want like 7 versions of 3.9. I mean, one is enough, certainly of that one, right? So I created this little program, little shell utility you can run using, you can UV run it if you like, which is pretty cool. And what it does basically is it goes through and it says, find me all of the UV installed Pythons and show me which ones are duplicates. So a duplicate might be 3.9.3 and a 3.9.4. Like I have 2 3.9s, right? And you could even say, I want to just prune them down so I only have the latest of each major. I mean, it's not really a major version, but there's never going to be a 3 or the 4.0. So I'm going to call 3.8 the 8 parts of the major version of Python. Anyway, because we can't have a 4, it's too traumatic. So you can just say keep that, or you can say actually keep 2. Like you could say I want 3.9.3 and 3.9.2, but no more than that as the older ones, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so you can run that, and I ran that here. I actually have a little upgrade script that I run on my computer periodically to upgrade Homebrew and that stuff, and then like upgrade UV, and then anything that's UV tool installed. And so now I've added this thing into the mix, and it says pruning UV's Pythons. It says, look, you've got 3.14.5 free threaded version, and you've got 3.14.7 free threaded. Why don't we drop the last one? It says you should remove that, for example. So you just say yes, and it takes away. So anyway, I'll put that out there for everyone to play with.
That's awesome. If you go back to the script, I want to call out something. I absolutely, at the very top of your script, you're using the inline dependencies.
Yeah. The UV run magic.
I absolutely love this. And I think if you think about, if you could have gone into Claude Code and said, hey, Claude Code, go prune my old versions and given it like your kind of rule set. And it would have run through and used tokens and found all the ones and used more tokens. But here you're giving it a deterministic. This is the way to write tools for your own agents and use that inline scripts. I love that. So this is a good example, I think, of using exactly that process. Because now UV run just works. It just works. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, it does. And if I had dependencies, that's where it really shines.
Yeah.
It'll automatically manage that for me.
Yeah. It's wonderful.
Yeah. And on my older installs of my UV tool projects, it did like lose track of the virtual environment, but apparently in the newer UV installs, it will like remap to the like across major versions. So like 3.14.3 and 3.14.7, it'll figure out, oh, we can just go to the 7, I believe.
Nice.
Anyway, so it might be a little bit of a pain if you might have to reinstall a few things on the older virtual environments, but I think it's in the future going to be less painful. All right. Also, very quick AI thing. We've not done any AI, so I would like
It's been an AI-free episode so far.
It has, and this is super quick. When you think about Ollama, I always thought about Ollama as for running local models. Yeah. Did you know that they have a cloud version?
I did know that. Yes.
Yeah, but of course you do. I knew you would. But you can sign up for like $20 a month to get DeepSeek, Kimi 3.
Very, very inexpensive.
Yeah, GLM 5.1, 5.2, all that kind of stuff. As a thing you could just add. So I'm using this to power my Hermes agent, which is really nice as an alternative to Chat GPT, which is also can be in the mix. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, especially with the ability to run like Kimi K3, the GLM 5.2, the big ones.
These things you can't run them yourself. So I've been doing like a
generally.
lot of. Yeah, I mean, if you have. If your room is loud, you might be able to run it, but if it's quiet,
you might be able to get away with them on the NVIDIA the Spark boxes. Like if you not just one, but if you daisy chain those things together, it will spread the memory across 2 of them. You might be able to get one of these running.
Yeah. Okay. If you have an over $10,000 dedicated local AI machine,
maybe.
Then I consider you a special category. Anyway, yeah. So people could check that. Thanks to Jeff Triplett for showing me that. Now,
that's a far more cost-effective way of doing it.
I'm going to be able to do this for a while until I break 10,000. Although I wouldn't hate having a couple of those Spark machines. Those are cool. All right. I would like to just go back and just have a little comment here, and feel free to jump in or not put your hand on the stove. So we published this to YouTube and got some comments there. Some in favor of our position, others like, what do you mean Coburg's not doing? Like, Coburg is great. But more of the comments were like, well, I think you're not taking the negative side of AI seriously enough. And that's fair. I do. We periodically say it. I feel like it's a little bit of a drag to just every week. Like, yes, I realize this. Anytime we mention LLMs, yes, I realize that a lot of this information was taken to train with, and it was copyright theft. Yes, I realize it's a data center that uses a lot of energy, right? Yeah, that's out there. Like we've said that before plenty of times. But I think also it's the reason I named it this. Codeberg puts head in sand, not just to like dunk on Codeberg. I mean, it's fun and all, but the reason is over 90% of software these days, software development is done with AI. Not exclusively, not like, no, just, hey, agent, go make Google or whatever. Right? Not that.
Just keep making software. Just
Yes.
pump out software until I tell you to stop, I guess.
Exactly. Until my energy bill is too high. But almost all of software these days is at least AI assisted in a significant way, 90% and above, and it's only going up. So when I say things like this, I'm trying to put this on people's radar, especially people who are like, I'm not willing to, like, I just don't even want to look at it. Like, that is a choice. But if you want a job as a professional software developer in 5 years, if you're like, I'm not going to touch AI, I will bet you it's going to be very hard to find a job. I already know companies are saying, we're not hiring unless you at least are willing to use AI somewhat. Or this is a skill that needs to be learned, and it is an important part. Even if you don't like it, it's like saying I don't like object-oriented programming, but all of a sudden everything is Java and C#. You're like, well, they only have objects, so you're going to have to just do a little bit of it. You know what I mean? Anyway, I just wanted to put that as a comment. It's like, I'm not trying to dunk on people who don't believe in it, but I do think if you put your head in the sand, it's going to have a negative consequence on your career. I don't know. How do you feel about this, Calvin, if you want to say anything?
I think we have to be eyes wide open and pragmatic about our position on this, and it's true. I don't want to imagine going back and not having an AI assisted environment, because it is very enjoyable to get so much done, because I can guide these tools that way.
Yeah. If you like creating software, it's incredible.
And I hate saying like, oh, now we're being complacent in our usage of, say, like copyright infringed material that has gone into the training these models, but I don't know how we can. I don't know what you can do about that. I don't.
It's
know.
not going back in the box.
Right, it's not going back in the box. And maybe there was an issue with the copyright law to begin with, and maybe there's a way we can compensate people so that this is fair, at least more equitable.
And I would like to put out there that some AI companies are doing that, but the most haven't, I would imagine.
Yeah.
But I just think it's like around the .com boom saying, we don't want to talk about the web. You could do that, but a lot of the stuff is happening on the web right now. And I think this is bigger in terms of the sort of transformational wave, like 90%, right? 90% of software development wasn't the web in the year 2000, I don't think. So
no, we're gonna be the pets.com for human knowledge.
Exactly. So we have dancing monkeys spending $1 million every 30 seconds. That was a Super Bowl ad around the .com days.
For those of you who are of an age.
Yeah, exactly. It was my favorite one, I think. But look, I mean, I understand the drawbacks. I understand what it's doing to software teams. I understand what the effects on like copyright information and the effects on people's jobs. But at the same time, it's 90%. It's really a challenge to ignore 90% of the industry. And some of the comments are like, well, the people who can actually think and who aren't idiots. It's like, you know what? Not everyone who chooses to use these tools is an idiot. That's a little bit harsh perspective. So I think, I think it's worth, I don't know. I just wanted to put that out there because I feel like people are just like, oh, you're just flippant about it. I'm like, no, it's just really transformational and significant, and we're going to have to deal with it like it or not because it's not going back in the box.
Right. Agreed.
Okay, now
There we go. Do we
after
have
all that, are we actually ready for a joke? I think we need
ready
a
for
joke, don't we?
I'm ready for a joke. I think we need a joke. That was a good little
We
tip.
need a joke, and that was a little philosophical, wouldn't you say? I would.
Okay.
I'd say so.
What do you
Okay.
got for me?
Well, did you ever read the Tao Te Ching sort of book, the Tao, like the traditional Chinese one?
No.
Have you read the Tao of Programming? Ooh.
I
I
have
would
not.
like to do a guided reading of the Tao of Programming.
All right.
We haven't done this for a while, so let's go over to the corporate wisdom. I can't link to it because it's like a weird. God, this is like the oldest website it could be
like-
made in 1995.
Is this hosted on GeoCities? What's going on here?
It might be, and oh my gosh, it even has a gradient background.
Yes.
All right, let's see. I don't think I can get it to do like a reader view. Oh well. Let's do a couple of sections from Book 7, Corporate Wisdom from the Tao of Programming. Okay.
Okay.
So 7.1. The novice asked the master, "In the east, there is a great tree, structure that men call corporate headquarters. It is bloated out of shape with vice presidents and accountants. It issues a multitude of memos, each saying, 'Go hence,' or 'Go hither.' Nah, nobody knows what is meant. Every year, new names are put onto the branches, but all to no avail. How can such an unnatural entity exist?" The master calmly replies, "You perceive this immense structure and are disturbed that it has no rational purpose. Can you not take amusement from its endless gyrations? Do you not enjoy the untroubled ease of programming beneath its sheltered branches? Why are you bothered by its uselessness?"
Where did you find this gem?
Oh, it's so good, isn't it? Oh my gosh. I'll do a little bit of, I think 7.3. I'll do a little 7.3, then we'll call it. The
Right.
magician of the ivory tower brought his latest invention to the master programmer to examine. The magician wheeled a large black box into the master's office, while the master waited in silence. "This is an integrated, distributed, general-purpose workstation," began the magician. "Ergonomically designed with a proprietary operating system, 6th-generation languages, and multiple state-of-the-art user interfaces. It took my assistants several hundred man-years to construct it. Is it not amazing?" The master raised an eyebrow slightly. "It is indeed amazing," he said. "Corporate headquarters has commanded," continued the magician, "that everyone use this workstation as the new platform for their programs. Do you agree to this?" "Certainly," replied the master. "I will have it transported to the data center immediately." And the magician returned to his tower, well pleased. Several days later, a novice wandered into the office of the master programmer and said, "I cannot find the listing for my new program. Do you know where it might be?" "Yes," replied the master. "The listings are stacked on the platform in the data center." There you go. So this is a fun read. I mean, you can't do too much of it. It's a thick, long joke, but we'll maybe come back to maintenance in a couple
We got
months or
9
something.
books we can go through here.
I know. Thus spake the master programmer. Though a program be 3 lines long, someday it will have to be maintained. All right.
Yeah, that's a good one right there. Great one.
a good
Great one to end on.
Indeed. All right. Well, very fun.
Thanks, Michael. And I'm going to go back to DjangoCon. We'll talk to you all next week.
Yeah. Have a great time at DjangoCon, and yeah, see you next week. Bye.
Sounds good. Bye.